Greetings, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the Indigenous Wisdom for the Earth series. Today, I have Anne Marie Chomat, and she is the project leader of Good Seed. Their mission is to nurture the health, well-being, and self-determination of Indigenous and other marginalized populations in Guatemala, and to engage vulnerable populations to co-author solutions to the health problems that they face, and so much more. So let me go ahead and turn it over to Anne Marie, and if you could start us off with an offering, please.
So thank you so much, Tara. It's such an honor to be here. And I guess I wanted to start just with a disclaimer because you've been so kind to invite me to speak in the Indigenous series, Indigenous Wisdom series, but I did want to just share that I'm not Indigenous. My roots are European. I was born in California on alone land. I grew up in France, studied in North America, and then for the last 20 years, I've been working and living extensively in the Global South, and most recently and extensively in Guatemala. And so these are really the roots and the experiences that I carry and that I come with today. Since we are talking about the Indigenous populations of Guatemala, which is where I'm working, and talking about the North and the South, I wanted to start by calling in the directions, just to help us center ourselves a little bit. I'm accompanied here today by the presence of so many and by so many of their own life experiences, their lands and ancestors. And I just wanted to presence them. So to start, I wanted to just presence the North and all that comes before us, our ancestors, and all of our guides and mentors that come from the North, the global North. And along with that, deep knowledge, intuition, and wisdom. I also would like to presence the East, the land of the rising sun, of new beginnings, of hope, of new life, of new things that come into form and that take time to grow. And from the South, that I also would like to presence my guides and mentors from the South, from Guatemala and beyond, and also this space that represents the full expression of life, a full growth and potential, and life lived in beauty and full boldness, which is what we would hope for everyone. I also would like to presence the West, which represents a time to rest, to recharge our batteries, to let go of the obsolete and all that doesn't serve us anymore, and to dream into reality to dream new realities into being. And then finally, I also would like to present the center, the space where the North meets the South and the East meets the West, where the above meets the below and the below meets the above, and where all things converge and all things are born. And it's the center point of each one of us, but also the center point for this gathering of women from all corners of the earth that I know Tree Sisters represents so beautifully. And together holding these seeds of endless possibility. Thank you so much for this space, Tara, again.
Sure, thank you. That was absolutely beautiful. And I can almost feel the presence of all the women with you when you're coming here to speak with us. So thank you so much for bringing that energy into the conversation. I'd love to just hand you the microphone and let you start wherever you feel most comfortable starting.
Thank you. So I really wanted to start by landing us in Guatemala and to speaking about the women, their lived experiences, their contexts, just to really ground this conversation and help us understand just the space that we're here to share about. So I actually wanted to start by speaking about a young girl who I've actually never met, but is from one of the villages where I've been working. That I first started working 12 years ago now, when she was 11 years old. And her name is Claudia. And she was the first in her family to graduate from high school, and just was really filled with so much potential and dreams. And everyone thought that if anyone would be able to do something with their lives, it would be Claudia. But then when she finished high school, she wasn't able to go to university. She couldn't afford it. Her family couldn't afford it. And she couldn't find a job despite just looking everywhere. And so she ended up in a small room in her house, just weaving Indigenous clothing, which is just these beautiful fabrics that almost every woman really knows how to just make, and which she could sell in the market. And in her own words, she started to feel that she was just wasting away. She felt that making the very risky journey, 1,500-mile journey north, was her only way out. Her father had done it before, had worked for 4 years in Atlanta as an illegal immigrant, and he was able to send enough money back that allowed her to go to school and them to have a home. And so she felt it was the only way for her to get out and the only way she could become somebody. She made the headlines on May 23rd, 3 years ago, almost to this date, and you might have heard of her then. Only minutes after her arrival on US soil, she was shot and killed by a border patrol agent who has yet to be named, let alone tried or condemned. And the only reason we know about this is because a woman who lived there filmed it and televised it, and not televised it, but just shared it widely. And her full name, the name of this girl, she was 20 years old when she left us, and her full name is Claudia Patricia Gomez Gonzalez. And I really wanted to bring her center in this talk because she represents so many things, and I'll continue to weave her story throughout. As her mother shared after she died, all she wanted was to dream. And after a pause, she asked, when will we ever be able to dream? I think speaking for everyone in her community, and definitely the women. So I wanted to start with a question, or just a series of questions, or if we could imagine, what if girls, young women like Claudia, were allowed to dream and to feel like they were somebody on the land on which they were born? And what if mothers didn't have to hush away their children's dreams to protect them from a broken heart, or from feeling hopeless, or from feeling, or just from the possibility of losing their life in trying to find their wings? Just what we could just imagine the difference that would make, and just also start imagining what it would take to actually build a world where that's possible. To speak more broadly just about the context, just going out a little bit more from Claudia and her family, the Indigenous peoples of Guatemala, I think like so many, if not every Indigenous community around the world, carries a long history of colonization that dates back to more than 500 years. A long history of land dispossession, of exclusion, of racism, which continues today. And really, it's helped to just ensure a very large cheap labor workforce that would benefit the elites and export markets since a long, long time, and to this day. Following independence, there was continued even worsening land distribution between the elites and the indigenous populations. And in the mid-1950s, in the mid-1900s and 1950s, there were efforts to redistribute land to indigenous people, indigenous farmers. But this really went against US and national corporate interests. And so there was a CIA-backed coup, which deposed the president of the time and made sure that land reforms would never happen, and that military elite would be in control of the country. And soon after that, an armed conflict erupted, which ended just 25 years ago. So really is within recent history and the lived memory of the Guatemalan people. This conflict was fully supported by the United States, and it was really an attempt to suppress any efforts towards social change, land redistribution, anything that would benefit the indigenous population. And it was recognized as a genocide against indigenous population with a huge percent, 6%, I think, of the population, almost 250,000 people died. There was just complete razing of communities and huge internal displacement, and most of the people who were affected were indigenous. I wanted to quote the United Nations in saying when they were looking into this conflict, they wrote that the massacres, scorched earth operations, forced disappearances, and executions of Mayan authorities, leaders, and spiritual guides were above all to destroy the cultural value that ensured cohesion and collective action in Mayan communities. So you can imagine the impact is completely, really brutal. Post-conflict, Guatemala remains one of the most violent countries, societies in the world, and is one of the most dangerous countries to be a woman. This system of domination really reinforced and heightened gender-based violence, which became increasingly prevalent and normalized during and after the conflict. It's the third greatest number of femicides worldwide, and also one of the highest number of women are trafficked. This last year, it reached 7 girls or women a day. And then the traces on the populations, on the local indigenous populations are incredible, just with low self-esteem, substance abuse, complete destruction of their families, their communities, their support systems, and then of course, just a complete mistrust in anything outside of their communities. And we're talking about a majority population because more than half of the population in Guatemala is indigenous. The 21 Maya ethnicities make up the indigenous population, and 3/4 of them live below poverty. Just talking about the situation today, a large number in extreme poverty, and they're living off of small plots of land, and also have been very affected by the more recent trade agreements where local farmers can't compete on local markets because of the prices of produce coming from abroad, like corn coming from the United States at lower prices. And the impact of this is really huge if you're just these communities that have always been farmers, that have such a deep relationship to the land, such a deep relationship to corn within their cosmovision. They really feel that they call themselves hombres de maíz, the men of corn, that they're made from corn, and it's just completely, it's a conversation for another day. But it's just really part of their identity. And so it's just continued, just more fragmentation and so many youth nowadays growing up in Guatemala feel really hopeless and just not really able to find opportunity in the land where their parents have raised them. And then climate change and everything that affects so many other countries as well is quite important in Guatemala, especially in the form of droughts that affect the crops. So I hope that paints a picture. There's this wonderful saying about Guatemala, a beauty that hurts. And I really love that expression because it's such a tragic place, but it's also such a beautiful place that has a way of catching your soul and you can really feel, despite all this hardship, just the beauty of its people, and the strength and the resilience, and also just this incredible cultural wealth that has been dismissed and repressed, but it's still very vibrant.
No, if I could, I just wanted to say, Yeah, I absolutely love that they still hold that culture, like the men are so, the corn is a part of, who they are. It's not just I plant corn and it's a crop and a commodity, but it's a part of my heritage and part of my culture. And the stories about the, the pictures I see of Guatemala, you can see there's just this cultural pride that's so beautiful and evident. And it just looks like such an amazing country. And then to hear these facts, a lot of them, I don't think the majority of us are even aware of. It's not something that we encounter on our daily news, and it's disturbing. It's really difficult to realize that other countries have played roles in keeping indigenous populations down and continue to this day. And yeah, I really appreciate you setting the context of what the situation is so we can also understand, what you're bringing in and what hopes of light and change are possible in the horizon. So thank you.
Thank you, Tara. And I actually wanted to share in my emotion to start talking with you. I forgot that I have a photo. I wanted to share with you a photo of Claudia, this woman that I,
Yeah.
let's see if I can figure this out.
Let's honor Claudia.
Let's see. Share screen. Here we go. There. I think I'm just sharing my screen with you, but
yes, I can see it.
This is a picture of Claudia, a very petite woman, and I'll go into talk about that a bit more.
Yes.
All right, so now how do I go back?
There should be an exit.
There we go.
Yes. Yeah.
And
thank you for bringing her story in and raising that awareness. And yeah, I'm an American, so a lot of difficult emotions are coming up there for me around the fact she was shot by Border Patrol. So I better let you go ahead and continue talking.
Yeah, no, and I thought it was particularly relevant to speak of her because I had never done so before, and I'm aware of just the emotional. It's just such a. It's so hard to talk about these stories.
Yeah. They need to
but
be
I
heard.
felt these. I almost find hope and inspiration in this journey. Not almost, I do, just because she made it from the south to the north. She just barely made it, but she made it, and she carried a very strong message that just that we need to pay attention to her world, and I just really want to honor that today.
Yes, I hope her story and her spirit helps change lives for the better.
Yeah. So, Tara, I wanted to share a little bit about how we started, or I guess I started my journey in Guatemala and how I started getting involved, and then how my life became intertwined with those of these women in these communities, and what we've done since then. Unless you had anything that you wanted me to go.
Yeah, I am curious. It's like hearing how dangerous it is. What made you think, let me go down there?
Yeah. I don't know. I feel sometimes that it's just something brought me down there that's bigger than me. Almost the winds blew me there, without really knowing why. I actually trained as a medical doctor, and I specialized in something completely different. I was always very interested in working with marginalized populations. I think I wanted to be useful, but I think I also just had this fascination or this deep certainty that somehow what I needed to learn. There was a knowledge that I needed to learn from these populations, from the South, from people living on the edges. And I kept gravitating back to them. Whenever I had a time in my training, or even within my training where I could go, I went to just to really try to listen to these voices, and wanting to give a voice to them, but not really sure how or why. And so this led me to specialize in infectious diseases and global health. And then overnight, I switched from that to just deciding that I would dedicate my life to women. I was doing a master's in public health, and there's this man from across the world that I contacted because I needed to do an assignment in Cambodia. It was an assignment, and he worked there, and I wanted to make sure my research was something that could be interesting or necessary or useful. And I asked him what kind of infection or what can I research about that would be helpful about children's infections or something. And he said, just forget about that. There's so much attention to this. We really need more people to focus on women and the silent tragedy that they carry. And overnight, I think it just struck a deep remembrance within me. And I just overnight decided, okay, putting my whole life in a box, and I'm going to sit down with women and start a process of just learning from sitting with them. And so I was someone that I knew told me, why don't you come down to Guatemala? It's a very interesting place. I think you'd really find something here that would be meaningful to you. And so I headed down there, yeah. And there was something that really struck my attention about Guatemala. It's the high rates of stunting, of failed growth, which about more than half of children, or more than half of Indigenous children, are stunted. So they're not reaching their full growth potential. And there's a lot of focus, most focus has gone into nutrition and infection as the cause of this, that it was somehow linked to chronic malnutrition. And so most of the solutions have gone into nutritional supplementation, and how can we tell families or mothers to feed their children better. And this really struck me as odd, because it was the country that had been the most researched in nutrition problems because of the problem that was there. But nothing was changing. And it's also one of the most biodiverse countries in the world, with incredible abundance and fertility in the land. And it just, I think this just is really odd. And I started, the more I read about it, I became aware of this whole other literature that in more the psychosocial domains, that were also linking domestic violence to stunting, domestic violence experienced by the mother, and then during pregnancy or even before, and then also in the growing child, of course. But a lot of factors, psychosocial factors impacting a mother, would lead to stunting in her child. So things like poverty, discrimination, just violence, general violence, and then depression and anxiety were also linked to stunting, or to just children not being able to be born with their full potential. And the impacts are huge. You could say, okay, they're short, and I wanted to highlight that when Claudia, you could see how petite she was, and most women, they reach below my shoulders. I guess you don't know how tall I am, but I'm average height. But it's not just short stature. It's like the outward manifestation of just growth that's just not happening the way it should be. So overall, children who are stunted also just won't be able to have the same life potential, the same life opportunity, the same productivity as non-stunted children. And then it also affects their health long term. So they'll have increased rates of diabetes, of high blood pressure, of heart disease, of have decreased lifespans. And so it's really quite striking, the impact of, and the more I looked into it, I ended up doing a PhD in stress research to really focus on this as my topic, and to try to really weigh, okay, nutrition, or there's this whole other things that we're not looking at and that we're not addressing. And I spent a whole year, I think, just at my desk trying to find everything that was linked to stunting. And I ended up with this huge page of causalities, and nutrition was down here. But then, of course, everything affects nutrition, and everything affects emotional well-being and violence. And so I ended up with this huge web, infinite web of causality for stunting. And my really, the way I see it now is that stunting, like so many other diseases or ill states, is really the end system of a broken or failed system. This balance between the people who have access to safety and access to money and access to security and access to just not feeling stress all the time that something's going to happen. And then the other side, where just living in states of chronic stress because of where you're at on this scale. And that this is really just an end result of just this global unbalance that we have globally. And so, nutritional supplementation really can't replace system repair, which is what I really became convinced is what we're needed. And I started just feeling so many shortcomings of what I could actually offer to start working on this. So what I ended up doing is just sitting down with hundreds and hundreds of women, just for my field research, and visiting them in their homes, women who were pregnant, women who were just had their babies or within the first 1 or 2 years of having had their babies, and listening to their life stories. And I started to learn about their lived experience and what I had shared early on. And what I really came to see is just the complete isolation of these women who are locked up in their homes. Almost none of them had any friends. If they had a support person, it was their mother or their children, but really no one else they could turn to, either in their communities. Sometimes the church did have that role for a lot of them, but otherwise within their communities and even within the social system, there's really no one supporting them. And there also were no safe spaces for participation. So they were really, a lot of them felt locked into their homes and feeling, just without being able to contextualize anything. Gender-based violence was very prevalent with a lot of limited decision-making. So women really often were not deciding for themselves, even when they could leave the home in a more extreme situation, even if their husbands were working in the United States. Some of them were even still really reluctant to leave their home, or not everyone, but there's a lot of women really had trouble making decisions. And also, is also very difficult for women to make it on their own, just because of the poor opportunity and then the stigma against single women or women who go out to work. This one story of this woman who was working as a house cleaning homes. Her in-laws really just kept telling her that all she was doing is having an affair because she was away from the home so much. And there's just this huge stigma and so many barriers to women really being able to do anything. But then also there was this absolute presence, just women are there. And an ability to laugh, to just really share, create connection, and then this strength and resilience that I don't know if I've witnessed elsewhere so deeply. And then, of course, also just with their whole ancestry, their whole culture, their whole just so connected to the earth and to spirituality and to the cycles of the earth. And one of the things that I did, because it was quite hard to get women to talk about their experiences, to even voice it, to even share. There's a lot of fear about about women who would come to know and what would happen. So I ended up giving cameras. I used a research methodology called photo voice. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it involves giving cameras to people who don't have so much a voice, and it's not so easy to put things into words. And you invite them, or I invited them, to take pictures of things that matter to them. And so that's when they started really telling the stories of these women. And there was something, and I mention this because it's something really, I think a click happened for a lot of us within this space, because we'd have the women take photos, and then we would have them come together in small groups to share their photos and to share their stories. And there was something very freeing to them to be able to share, to take a picture of another woman, and then to share in confidentiality, but to share their woman story. And what that was, it was speaking about someone else, or hearing the story of someone else, but really speaking also about myself. And for the first time, realizing that other women were going through the same as them, and being able to just get it out, verbalize it, realize that other women were there, and that it wasn't just me, that something's wrong with me. I think so many women who've ever participated in a women's circle in the North and the South, anywhere, can relate with that, of just this liberation of, my gosh, it's not me. There's this whole system, we're all in this together. That there's something incredible about building trust and just letting myself be held and guided, or just listening to someone else and seeing her cry and crying along with her. It's something that doesn't happen very frequently in these communities. And so it's within this space that I think we together learned about the power of circle, and also about other women, and empathy among these women was starting to grow. And ultimately these women, the few women that really, I was working with them quite closely, they ended up expressing that they wanted to help other women. And so we put our heads together, and what emerged, what they actually breathed into being, was the concept of a women's circle. Not something that them or I had ever experienced before, but it just seemed like the problem is so big, it's this huge infinite web, and let's just start by getting together and just starting to reweave without knowing what else to do. And that's where it started, where everything started. Yeah, I wanted to share with you. Did you want to stop me with anything, Tara?
It's just making me think on our Tree Sisters map, which is kind of like a different stages, but coming together and connection. It just that factor alone is kind of like the springboard that allows you to grow and see that you have gifts, and that you can step out in the world and you can help others. And it's not until you get to that point and realize that, and then experience that you're able to step out of those things that keep you, hidden, for these women staying in their homes, not leaving their homes. And then just so beautiful for me to hear this, because it's just so similar to some of the things I've seen and experienced with the different women's groups and work that we do as well. So there's just so much, I know there's so many differences, but there's such a universal thread of women coming together and being that springboard, that support group, that embrace and connection that takes you to the level of being so much more in life. So I absolutely love that. So
yeah, to be able to start, just as you said, just seeing above it and beyond it, and realizing that there's a way out, that it's not just my fate.
Yes.
And then collectively being able to do it. There's something just really powerful.
That's so beautiful. I love that we're sharing pictures and that it just seems to spring from that. Yeah, please share more.
Yeah, so maybe I what I would love to do is really hard, or not hard, but just I think pictures are worth a 1,000 words. So maybe what I can do is share the film. I have a very short film about just in Guatemala with a woman. So maybe I'll just spring forward a little bit to where we have our women's circles and we're now doing them. What we did was we ended up, none of us really knew what we were doing. We just knew this is what we needed to do. And so myself and two local women who were both Indigenous, but had experience with working, leading groups and leading circles, at least not women's circles, but at least nutrition. They'd go to the communities and speak about nutrition, or they had experience working in group settings. And then with 12 women from the communities, we just sat down for a whole year and just started to build and experiment, and that's how everything started. And then we did a try, and everything's history since then. It worked so well and created such an impact. So I'll skip forward to the film if I can hear this out again.
Go ahead. Yeah, no, I love how it just emerged and grows and evolves and changes as you were working on it. And I think so much in life is not an exact plan. It's when we release into that knowing and what that feeling and following that path that these miraculous circles and groups and situations can come forward. So beautiful to hear about this. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, a friend of mine, a friend and colleague who works with women's circles a lot. She when I shared my story with her for the first time, she remarked, I had never thought about this, but that a lot of women enter women's circle space knowing what they're getting into, and for me and these women, it kind of just fell on us. Like it's the women's circle almost that chose us and said, look, you need to get your act together and figure out how to do this, because it's what we need now. It was like a lot of, I think, just remembering and just feeling somehow intuitively that something was happening when we were sharing, and not just sharing within women, but also between North and South. I think there was something catalytic also about that there was just a very interesting space for all of us, and of deep learning and unlearning for myself as well. But I'll go ahead and share the movie, and then for the
Organización Buena Semilla Incruto Ishki familia pueblos indígenas ani nametrich puaba una organización jara Shinilia Santiago Atitlán Ichka San Juan Otulcalco Banit San Kiruto Ishki San Kiruto Sar Akiva kono an ko hechubik kiben kola no ko pensar in kiben kha y jajababa y que ishqi rituan porque ishqi nkatsina apoyo chka ya que chpam qtinamet majonja en una asistencia irshinidia.
El objetivo principal de los círculos de mujeres es crear un espacio en donde las mujeres puedan ser libres, puedan también canalizar todas esas emociones que tal vez en casa no lo pueden hacer, y aparte formar una red de amistad, de hermandad, en donde las mujeres puedan expresarse, apoyarse y tener como que un espacio donde también puedan expresar sus sentimientos, sus emociones y sentir esperanza.
Participar en un círculo de mujeres ha sido el inicio de algo maravilloso y profundamente transformador en la vida de muchas mujeres, en donde logran encontrar sus alas, su propia voz, su propia luz, y atreverse a compartirles quizás por primera vez, donde se dan el permiso de sonreír, reír, crecer, florecer, donde logran superar sus miedos y se vuelven lideresas, ejemplos, inspiraciones para otras mujeres.
Ana mahangkas ni uan kum shub akhat ich kenti onak opresión nukan Bertak ba in ba la primera vez she baby. Tak pa segunda vez ba chi consumam ba. Trishum en wach ba. Ma ho chik she betvi ik she qaban kha anak actività sha ban shqawach ba. Shuk shkhav kha shqaban khilat ya lol ba. لا خلاص نعنن إخقاش بكخا يبير إخقاش شرويا أكنن بيتزيد
Amach oninim porque y como que se voy a cochipo a más tak shitak niapti nim in tapal to nui chichan obe el cane entonces como que hasta tocan nui tich nicht tich tak net win to nui inatsun pero qelbet kun rat kala achtung pontil que no wi ta wi kwan senten lastamente tu y un montón de cosas hasta subiendo nui cochiputsun entonces asunte شكوتنا تخشما جينا سلكنيك إتى جينا سيء إنتقى يعني مش ناقصش ما تبقى
There.
That was
Just wanted
wonderful.
to share that one part.
Yes. I love that, just the socialization and getting to be in unity with others heals. It's, it's the best medicine.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's really striking, I think, from these women's stories is that it goes, it touches on and just the stories that we've gathered from them over time, but that really touches their self-esteem and their agency and their sense of worth and ability to do something, but also touches on their well-being and also on their physical symptoms, which they were very clear about in the video, that they noticed a very clear impact on their health, their physical health. And then also on their feelings of stress and busy minds, that they're able to calm down and feeling less sad and just more hopeful in general. And that beyond feeling for the first time that they had friends or that they had other people they could count on. So yeah, it's really incredible. I was blown away when I really started seeing the impact of these spaces and the strength that was starting to really bubble up and and seep out from every crack and everywhere. Yeah.
Yes,
Very
no, I can
beautiful.
see it in your passion as you talk about it, and also in the women as they were sharing. It's absolutely beautiful. It's so wonderful that they have this. How long has this project been going on? Has it been a year, 5 years?
Yeah. So we started, I was working with a lot of the women who show up in this video starting 12 years ago now, when we started just sitting down with other women and then started interviewing other women. And then it's been a work in progress for 12 years, but we we started working on developing or co-creating the circles in 2014, and then started in 2015 to do cycles of multiplication, where the women leaders and co-creators of everything then experience the circle and then multiply it with women in their community. So we do these cascades of experiencing it and then sharing it has been our approach. And then so it's been a good 5-6 years that we've been doing the circles, and we've tried it in different areas. We've tried to expand it to see if they would be how it would work in different contexts of Guatemala, because there's so much diversity ethnically, and regions also that are very marginalized but are not so indigenous, but still are torn by fragmentation and conflict, or post-conflict and violence. So we've tried it now in 3 different areas of Guatemala, and also have tried to see how we could expand it. So we've experimented a bit with the formal healthcare system, if we could have health workers deliver it, and that's been incredible. But in the end, I think we've been working on just having it be grassroots, to really, really keep it in the hands of the local women and have it be. It just feels right to more challenging, because it's hard to know how to expand in these contexts. And then the other thing that we started doing is women are within their context and their communities and so dependent on the experience of men and the overall experience of their communities. So we also started working with men who there's huge rates of alcoholism and of all of these, what women are going through. So many other men are also experiencing of just not having spaces of participation and experiencing discrimination and just hopelessness and alcohol and everything. And so we've been working on a parallel model, like a model, but a parallel space of getting men together. And it's a completely different kind of space. We've been working on it a lot, but we're calling it social mobilization, community mobilization involving men. And the process with that is a bit different, but it's a lot what you were mentioning before of how first starting of getting them to map out and think about the issues and see these webs of causality and just being able to separate themselves from it for the first time and realize also that, my gosh, everyone has these same experiences. And if I have problems with alcohol, it's because I can see that it's linked to the conflict and so I feel a little bit less worthless and I feel a little bit more hopeful and about it. And then we then move to collectively the men prioritizing which issues they could possibly work on and then building solutions together and then trying them out. And it's really been beautiful as well and quite surprising with a lot of the same impacts of just rebuilding the social fabric and finding my voice and even stopping my alcoholism. And what the other thing that we've noticed is just this desire to start helping one another. That's really, really, really has brought these groups together. And how do I communicate nicer or better with my wife? You know, we have all these tensions and it's not always very nice. And maybe if I just give her a hug once a day, let's see what happens. And then the men all deciding together, well, actually, that's kind of hard. Why don't we start with the kids? So start giving a hug to the kids every day. And then the men coming back and talking about it and then saying, my gosh, it's made such a difference. And then trying to just say nice things to their wife. And just, it's been incredible and unexpected and surprising also just how much these spaces are needed of participation, of me being able to share my solutions and feel like I have something to contribute and not always be in a position of receiving help and of feeling worthless because no one ever asked my opinion or so.
Yeah,
that's been our path.
Yeah, coming from that place of connection and community, rebuilding, because community, we used to all ancestrally be part of community, and I don't know, our world just became so individualized that we've gotten so far from that. And I wanted to make sure I asked, because I saw also on your website that you include the Indigenous elders who hold that knowledge and bringing that in. So I'd love to hear a little more about what that is like in the participation of this program.
Yeah, we wanted to very deliberately bring in the elders and also youth as just bringing very different skill sets and knowledge and see just what happens when you bring, how they see the world differently, but then also what they bring and how, and it's been really beautiful. There's been just different, they've expressed different ways of seeing things, but then also concern for one another and desires to figure out how to help across generations, and try to, a lot of the elders just very concerned about the youth and even just telecommunications and cell phones and all of this, and how to recreate spaces of sharing more closely with the youth. And so they've self-organized to bring groups together, like the elder group and the youth group, to bring them together and with women and also with men, because we did it with both. Yeah. And it is quite a work in progress, or because a lot of, and it touches also on a lot of the difficulties of this work, because some of the elder women, we were working with traditional midwives in a group, and they really were thinking of bringing ritual back and having that be, and so helping youth and themselves just creating spaces of a ritual and deeper connection with spirituality, and but then they shut themselves off, saying, well, this is not okay, it's stigmatized, it's unsafe to go there. And there's so many layers of shame around the ancestral knowledge as well. So it's been very eye-opening, and also just really has gotten ourselves scratching our heads of how can we really dig deep and even create spaces where women can even remember or just remember what they carry. They carry in since always, and in their connection with plants, their knowledge about the plants, their knowledge about the connection with the earth and how we're so connected and interdependent. And it's been a very interesting and a challenging path to know how can we really create these spaces when, and every once in a while it just feels like, my gosh, yeah, this sometimes there's little windows that open that, and the women feel, my gosh, I have so much here. I really have so much to contribute from my own space without needing to learn anything else. But it's definitely a work in progress. Yeah, the voices have been so crushed that it's been taking a long time to to even just explore those spaces that speak more about my ancestry and what I'm bringing as an Indigenous man or woman.
No, sometimes it's like there you need the space to first realize that you have a voice, and that it's safe to bring your voice, and then that your voice is welcome, and that you can actually be sharing your authentic input and your stories and your experience, and then honoring the ways of the elders as well. And I hear that there's still some hesitancies around it, but I just hope that continues to open up, because I just see how much that could potentially enrich the youth, and change their perspective of, they've grown up in such a world that's been faced more than its fair share of hardships. That, this is an opportunity to get this generation on a different path and get things going in a new direction. And I wish you all the best with that continued work and getting to those places and finding those joy moments where you're like, yes, this is what's working for us. So,
yeah. And I think one of our main challenges has been really, even though I've been working with these women for 12 years and we've co-created it all from together, there's still a very big resistance on their part to say, I can do this alone. I don't need you. I don't need you to tell me how to lead a circle or what the session could be. And it's been, I think it's something, that I think it takes everyone coming together and starting to unlearn about these normal, what we're used to about spaces of sharing, of it being someone who's always doing the talking and the other one who's supposed to listen and receive, and these vertical spaces, and how can we really create spaces where women feel safe to come forward, and also that are experimental, where we use play a lot, learning through play and games and laughter, and arts-based methods a lot, as ways to, I might be so scared to share my voice, but if it's in the context of play, there's something kind of disarming about that I'll speak my mind. And so, just even start talking or say something and then that becomes practice. And little by little, I realize what I have to say. I can do it, and so we use a lot of methods that get all of us out of our head a lot to try to unlearn all of this in our limit. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like they have a lot that they could share and teach us here in the more Western world. Yeah. No, the fact that they've had years and years of being colonized and oppressed and kept down, the fact that they're even within 12 years coming out and growing and finding these new ways of being is, beautiful, absolutely wonderful to hear is happening. Yeah. Did you have another piece that you wanted to share, or do you want to tell us about what your thoughts and hopes are to get people North and South together, or where did you?
Yeah, maybe just a final kind of just some closing thoughts about things that we've learned and have, I think collectively are things that we've learned, myself and then my local team and even the women in the communities who are leaders. And I think I wanted to bring them to the table of just things we've learned, and if we're truly committed to creating a space where these women and these communities and can really step up and rise and reclaim their voice, their identity, their sovereignty. That there's a few key things that we've learned, and I just wanted to maybe mention them quite in passing, and we can go deeper if you wish. But one is just the importance of unlearning. And as a physician, and I have all these studies in academia, and it's been such a process of unlearning for myself, and it's been such a process of unlearning for my Guatemalan colleagues who have been also touched by academia and have more power and more voice than women in the communities, and to really be willing to re-examine everything in that lens of how much, just how much we're influenced by these perceptions of who has power and who doesn't, who has wealth, worth, and who doesn't. No, financial is huge of how we go about thinking. And you go into these communities, and I've caught myself envying just their ability to be present and their ability to laugh, and how, just it really makes you question a lot about our concepts of what constitutes worth and wealth, and who has to learn from who, and what do we have to share, what kind of spaces can we open, and really what good is my knowledge here, and what is it that I need to learn, guided by these women in these contexts. And then also just this belief that we are separate, that no one's life has an impact on another, these walls that we build, and these gaps between North and South, and we have this illusion that we're independent and that we don't have an impact, and that their problems are their problems, and that we have nothing to do with it. And I was hoping to highlight that a lot with my introduction, and even Claudia's story about how sometimes we need these jolts that kind of crack open this illusion that we're separate, and that we feel deeply moved and touched and broken in a way, and that things don't make us any sense, or we're able to see things from above, or just something that just jolts our system, that we're able to realize that we're really all in this together, and that we need to all be part of each other's solutions, and to invite move if we want people to be able to really come up and shine with their full light and their voice. We really need to get over this system of who is on top and who's not, and create a system of collective leadership where your gift matters and my gift matters and everyone's gifts matters. And if one person isn't able to share their gifts because of whatever reason, we all lose. We're all losing, because it's really, we all really need one another and need to find out ways to not leave anyone behind. Otherwise, we all lose out on it. Yeah. And I was really inspired recently. I've been just reading a book on trees, and I wanted to bring it in because yeah, you're standing in front of a huge gathering of women, of tree sisters, and just what we can learn about these other organisms of trees feeding nutrients to one another so that they can all be strong. And how can we we all have medicine for someone else, and how can we just create this reciprocity and these real flows of giving and receiving, but from a place of getting everyone in the space of sharing and of authenticity. So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, that's amazing. Wonderful knowledge. You just said it all so beautifully. And it's so important, and especially at this time, where we are on the planet, for people to bring their gifts forward. It's needed even more now than it ever has before. And yeah, no, I just absolutely loved everything you said. So that was amazing and beautiful. And oh goodness. Did you want to share your website or talk about how people who want to hear more can get involved?
Yeah, I'm happy to share the website. It's it's I forget, it's www.buenasemilla.org. I think you'll be able to share it on the site you mentioned.
Yes, I will put it up on our website.
Yeah, and so you're welcome to just connect through there or connect with myself. I think, I think maybe I would love to share just this, what I'm feeling into, what a lot of us are feeling into, we really need right now. I think women from around the world are feeling this need of, okay, we want to rise up, but we have to all rise up together. It's not okay that there's these women who can't dream and who can't make it and can't, it affects us somehow. We're all interconnected. We're all, And so I wanted to speak to a few challenges.
Sure.
I think I've already spoken about just the difficulty and really all of us being able to rise up just because of these different levels of oppression and of repression, of forgetting and of voicelessness. And I think we all need to join heads to really figure out how we can do this. We have things we've learned that work, and I know there's so many other groups, and I'm sure Tree Sisters also has things that I feel there's so much learning and sharing to be done of how can we really start cracking these spaces open and start believing in things being done differently. And the other challenge is that we're working in these contexts of extreme poverty. And so it's hard to know how to figure out systems of sustaining these circles. Women aren't just able to get together, and there's a lot of investments of mentorship and we're needing to pay, for example, our women's circle leaders to be able to hold circle for other women. And so I mentioned that because it just creates all of these problems or these big questions about how can you sustain this kind of, and we're really eager to explore solutions of even helping women to develop their own, to start tapping into their dreams and start risking themselves to dream even bigger and start thinking, okay, what could I do? What kind of regenerative or solidarity economy can I do within my communities or with the North and the South? And how, as a global community, we can support one another with that. Or how can we share knowledge, share resource, redistribute somehow, where we're all create spaces where we're all learning from one another, and we're all sharing what we're able to share, and we're able to, just really come together in greater solidarity and in ways where we're able to create spaces of real reciprocity and sharing and mutual growth, and realizing that we all have something to contribute and to share with the other. And I think especially for these voices of the voiceless, having that kind of a space and realizing, I know when they share things to me and I'm like, my gosh, that's amazing, that's changing me. It means so much because they've never heard that from anyone. And here I am, this person who's from the North and who represents everything about power to them, whether it's true or not. it's amazing for them to be able to have that outlet. And so I'm really interested in forming alliances and exploring what this space could look like, of how we can support one another and really start exchanging things, knowledge, resources, stories, anything that could just really benefit all of us, because we need it up north too, of just, there's such a need and such a searching for what, reconnecting with our relationships with the earth, with our spirituality, with, on so many levels, those are lessons that really are carried by the indigenous populations of this world, and they haven't forgotten that knowledge, or not all of it.
Yeah.
So I think there's so much potential there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just thinking of, I imagine in some situations it's just daily, getting by, and it's very hard to be in a position to be exploring who you are and what you want to bring to the world when you're trying to get enough money to put food on the table, or have a place to live, or even, have the freedom to speak your mind, without worrying about, oh, that's societally, I can't talk like that, or I can't express the thought. And yeah, I just love the dream of a world where all women can just speak from their hearts and their souls and share what's on their minds and give their gifts without any limitation, whether that's, financial or society or location. Yeah. No, I'm on board with you. It's like, how can we explore these opportunities and see what can grow? Absolutely.
And I'm so inspired by the work that Tree Sisters does, and just this concept of restorative, moving from consumer to restorative. And there's something so, that is just so amazing there. And it's made me really think about restorative also towards our own species, and how can we restore balance. And I really, really love the work that you're doing. So I think we have so much to learn from you.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Yeah, we're expanding into even more and more ways, and how we can work with communities, and just, we're looking at all these possibilities. So seeing what's potentially available to us to do. And yeah, I'm sure we'd absolutely love to sit down and talk with you about what you do, what you see, and how, if there's something that we've worked together, because I know we have grows, our own women's circles, which are the grows. And so that's certainly a good starting point to get you in touch with the grows team, and talking about what might be possible there as a beginning point. And yeah, no, absolutely. Just so inspiring, just so much you've shared. It's just so important and so real and so needed. Thank you for having the courage to just head to another country because you felt you had that calling, and just following spirit and knowing, and then seeing these changes come. It's so beautiful. I'm just so grateful for what you've done and the work you're all doing there.
Thank you, Tara. Thank you. So I'm aware that we've covered a lot in this short time together. So what I wanted to offer before, in closing, what I wanted to share with you is a short meditation to help us all return to our centers, and also integrate everything that we've journeyed through together. So I'm going to invite you to just close your eyes and start by taking some deep breaths. Inhaling and exhaling, and with an exhale, just letting anything that's there out, whether it's a sigh, just releasing, just returning to the stillness within. And we've spent a lot of time just sitting here and listening, talking. So you might feel just the need to shake a little bit or stretch, whatever it takes to just really come back to yourself and become more present. To focus on your breath in and out. And to just become aware of everything that we've journeyed through together in this short time. And with it, any emotions or thoughts or physical sensations that you might be holding on to. And just become aware of them, notice them, accept them. Let them rise within you with this awareness. And with your breath, imagine yourself breathing into your heart space. With every exhale, just breathing into your heart, trying to just expand your heart space. Noticing it expand. And with your next breath, you notice a little window that opens with your breath. You just continue to breathe into this space, now watching as all of these things that you've been holding on to, that you are holding on to, just leave through the window and you let them flow, you let them go. Just becoming aware of this cycle of receiving and giving, taking in and letting go, returning. All breath, all emotions back to the earth, to the winds. And as you do, you notice, as you focus in on your heart space, this expanding heart space, you notice a little bird, a beautiful little bird, iridescent green from head to tail, this very, very long tail, and bright red on its chest and a little yellow beak. And you recognize it as the Quetzal bird, the sacred bird of the Maya. And many ancient people believed that the Quetzal would just die of sadness if anyone tried to hold it captive. The Quetzal bird that symbolizes liberty and all things that belong to the world out there that we shouldn't hold on to. And as you breathe, your last breath, letting go anything that you hold within, this little bird opens its wings and takes flight and flies out of the window as well, along with every last thought and emotion and heaviness or grief or guilt or sadness or overthinking. And you watch it fly away with its long tail, looking like a flying serpent. Just watch it go. So beautiful. You keep breathing in and out, focusing on your heart space that feels so expansive now. And as you do, you notice something there. You try to become aware of anything that might have shifted or changed, moved, touched during this time. Anything you might have remembered, any deep knowing. And as you continue to focus inward, you notice something within your heart space, a gift that the Quetzal left there for you. And you approach it and to see what it is. It might be a feeling, a word. It might be a little note or something written on it. It might just be a feather or an intention. And you pick up this gift in your hands and lay it over your heart and just let it melt back into you. Be taken up by every cell of your heart, every cell of your being, every piece of you, that they might take in this gift. And when you do, and you feel complete, you offer it back out to the world, this gift that is yours to keep, that is also your gift of self to the world, to the greater good, to the collective. To the greatest good for all of life. Remembering that we are all gathered here together. In the circle that unites us from all corners of the world. From north to south and east to west. And you just notice these gifts. Weaving a blessing to the world for the goodness of all things and the healing of all things. And with that, you can just start moving your fingers, your toes, and just returning to the space. And open your eyes when and if you feel ready. And I wanted to end with a song, the words and the music and the voice of a beautiful young Cachiquel woman of Guatemala called Sarah Kuruchich. And I will just leave you with her.
Con cabellos largos, huipiles blancos, bajo la noche de luna, nueva creciente, llena menguante, ella se mostró. Algunos por los pueblos saben caminar, han visto su rostro cicatrizado está. Hay quienes le temen, la creen sobrenatural, pero su historia les quiero contar. Obligada a casarse con un tipo de mayor edad que creía que las mujeres se deben dominar y que sus cuerpos son un objeto sexual. Pero ella huyó porque sabía que su cuerpo solo a ella pertenecía, nadie golpearla debía, su vida es de ella y de nadie más. Recorre las calles y con huipiles blancos pasar. Le llaman así guanaba, le llaman bruja, le llaman animal, porque lucha contra las violencias del sistema patriarcal. Recorre las calles y con huipiles blancos bajo la luna y el sol va caminando, y su palabra y su mirada con fuerza de bosque y de montaña para nunca más callar. Le llaman la ciguanaba, le llaman bruja, le llaman animal, porque lucha por las mujeres y su dignidad. Janta pek ashti samech pakivi kono el rishoki shkeruto shkeru kor. Ella no va a parar de caminar, trae consigo la fuerza de los barrancos y la libertad. Contribuye a sembrar, a sembrar.
Such a powerful and also beautiful song. I just love that. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I can't do any justice with my words, so I'll just let the song speak for itself.
Yeah. But thank you so much, Tara. And I just hope so much we can, yeah, just as this collective, this gathering of women, we can find ways to just all hold each other's dreams and, yeah.
Absolutely.
These beautiful women who are everywhere.
That is a shared dream. So happy to have met you. So glad you happy to have found us and that we can connect with this and share your story with our network and see what's possible. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Tara.
Was there any last thing that you wanted to share?
No, just deep gratitude for you and for this space and for all that you do and all that Tree Sisters do.
Wonderful. And thank you. Thank you for all that you do and for bringing that story. I almost feel like I got to meet some of them today. So it was lovely. And so just sending you so many positive wishes for continued success and expanding and dreaming into a world where it's possible for all.
Thank you. I receive it all. And you'll carry it.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and close this out here. So thank you, everyone, for joining. And yeah, thank you so much for being our guests. Thank you.